Hello and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at what's coming in the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I am your host, Tanya Schrum. We are joined as usual by the North Coast Journal's news editor, Thad Greenson, and arts and features editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Greetings and welcome to the program. I hope everybody's having a great week so far. And how have we been doing with our first little rain that came in the area? Everybody enjoying that?
So welcome.
Yeah.
I can't wait to have more of it.
I know. I was energized by it. So I'm looking forward to more. Well, and speaking of getting on to the weather of the area, Thad, can you tell us what's on the cover of this week's North Coast Journal?
Yeah, this week we have a story that I wrote that's kind of diving into looking at the essentially the fire response up in Del Norte County. So the fire relief aid and particularly local organizations that have been going up there to help. But really, as I started reporting the story, it really kind of turned into a story about how kind of the spate of natural disasters or disasters, natural and otherwise, that the North Coast has faced over the last handful of years, really going back to PG&E's public safety power shutoffs that kind of cut power with little notice for several days at a time up here back in, I think it was 2018, quite a while ago. But the North Coast has kind of been fine-tuning and honing its ability to respond to these kinds of disasters, largely through nonprofit organizations, to the point that we've now really developed kind of an umbrella infrastructure with the Humboldt COAD, which is Community Organizations something disasters. It's not against disasters.
Agency?
Active in disasters.
Active.
There we go. But so we've actually, kind of formed groups specifically to help these varying small nonprofits that all kind of operate on a shoestring budget work together and communicate together in real time to kind of better respond in a coordinated effort when disaster strikes. And so the story kind of notes how this Humboldt COAD, as it's known, first was activated for the Rio Del earthquake and was really successful in efforts from everything from bringing food trucks down there to helping make sure the Red Cross shelter was staffed and had all the supplies it needed. And it's really stayed active since then, pretty much all year, going from one disaster to another, from from the earthquakes to windstorms to rainstorms, now to fire season. And one thing that was really struck me in reporting the story is that kind of Humboldt County has been so effective through these nonprofit organizations in doing this that now when we have kind of this massive disaster up in Del Norte County, which I'm not sure if kind of the average folks realize or have been following how serious a situation that the Smith River fire has been. And how much it's impacted Crescent City. But, it's the largest fire in the nation right now. It was sparked in mid-August by 150 lightning strikes that all came in the matter of a couple days, sparked a bunch of different little fires that all quickly kind of grew together. And then exacerbating things, the Pacific Power, which provides power service to the entirety of Del Norte County, realized that the fire had come within a quarter mile of its high-power transmission lines. And in an effort to protect its crews and public safety in general, they de-energized those lines, cutting power to the entirety of Crescent City and the rest of Del Norte County with very little notice, and leaving residents there without power for, I think, up to 5 days. And so and at the same time, the air quality was terrible. So you really had kind of a multifaceted disaster, and these Humboldt County organizations just really leapt to the challenge and went to the aid of residents up in Del Norte County, which was just really neat to see and talk to them about.
It was definitely interesting to read how everybody kind of synced together and really made a great effort to help out wherever they could.
Yeah, and it sounds like I said, the Humboldt Coad has been really instrumental in that. But then there's also the title of the story is Trial by Fire, and there's also the notion that we've just developed some muscle memory at doing these things. And so I spoke to Jessica, who's the president of Pay It Forward Humboldt, and she said, like, we just are at a point where we can anticipate people's needs when there's a forest fire. Every time there's a forest fire, we know we're going to need certain things, and we're just really have developed, the reaction to collect those things and distribute them pretty effectively and efficiently. Which is neat. So I also got the chance to catch up with the Humboldt Community Food Hub, which is through the North Coast Growers Alliance, and is really working with local farmers and food producers to be active in responding to these types of things, which often come with supply chain issues and stuff like that. So, for instance, in Delaware County, Highway 199 that runs up to Oregon has been closed through the duration of the fire, and so they've been having trouble getting some basic supplies in. And this new hub was able to, working with Pay It Forward Humboldt, ship large amounts of produce up to Delaware County for residents there, which was really neat. The last thing, and this isn't really, Humboldt County specific, but that was just really neat to me in reporting the story is just learning what a crucial role the Delaware County schools played in responding to this disaster. And so I caught up with Jeff Harris, the superintendent up there, and he was just, really walked me through everything the school did, which was really amazing. So the fires broke out, a couple weeks before school was supposed to start. So most of the district staff was not on calendar. They were, in the midst of their summer off, but really mobilized anyway to help the community through. And so Jeff was telling me that they did everything from sending, district school buses up to Gasky to help evacuate residents there and get them and their belongings to safety. Their IT person helped when the power was shut off. The county operations center lost internet service, and so sent their IT person over there to troubleshoot. They set up a Wi-Fi hotspot in the high school parking lot so that residents there could get in touch with loved ones from outside of the area and touch base and let them know that they're doing okay. The school or the district kitchen staff, their nutrition staff, mobilized to cook hot meals, not just for folks staying in the Red Cross shelter and first responders, but also for all of Crescent City, basically. If saying anybody who needed a meal while the power was out could come and get one. So just really a monumental effort. It's cheesy, but I'm just reminded of the Mr. Rogers line of look for the helpers, and it's and reporting the story was fun because I got to talk to a lot of helpers and a lot of people out there really trying to make these really horrible experiences for folks a little bit easier and a little bit better, and helping and get them through.
I think that it was important that you ended with the call to action for people that can get involved to think about getting involved before the next disaster so that they are trained mm-hmm. and available. If it's something you're called to do, it's definitely something everybody could use more hands at.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I'll say on that is just, that the folks I talked to from the Red Cross and from Pay It Forward Humboldt were very clear in just saying that, that climate change is a reality and we're on the front lines of it. And we're going to see more and more disasters going forward, weather related, fire related. And it's going to be, as that happens, there's going to be more and more competition regionally and nationally for resources. And so it's really up to individual communities to be ready to respond. And as a part of that, they want volunteers. They need human power. So check out their websites, find ways to get involved and help out.
And in the vein of climate change, let's pivot to the next story in the journal.
Yeah, I reported also this week on some developments in Humboldt's ongoing efforts to prepare for the potential installation of a massive deep sea floating wind farm off the coast. the Harbor District has entered a exclusive right to negotiate agreement with Crowley Maritime, a massive global company that specializes in shipping and maritime services. And from kind of the beginning of this arrangement, there's some folks have raised some concerns about Crowley's human rights track record. It's facing 2 lawsuits from former employees who are alleging that they were sex trafficked by a company manager in 2 different instances, and that essentially they are, one is alleging that he raped her, and another is alleging that he sexually assaulted her. Both are alleging that that there was a pattern of sexually harassing behavior, a climate that enabled it, and that when they brought concerns to managers in the company, they were ignored prior to these assaults. So those are 2 federal lawsuits that are moving forward that have been known about for some months. What came to light last week, closer to home, is that the Lost Coast Outpost was the first to report that Matthew Marshall, who's the head of the Rhode Coast Energy Authority, reached out to Crowley's Human Resources Department last month, with some allegations about the local vice president, Jeff Drenny, who had been kind of the local face of Crowley, who was on hand to sign the agreement with the Harbor District. And Matthew, in this letter obtained by the Outpost, alleged that he witnessed some sexually harassing behavior of Jeff and a subordinate at a conference down in Sacramento. And then after talking to some people in Humboldt County, Matthew says that he heard from a number of women who had worked with Jeff up here who raised concerns about his behavior. So within a handful of days of Crowley getting this news this email from Matthew Marshall, it announced that Jeff Drenny is no longer with the company. The exact terms of that separation remain unclear, but this comes as the environmental review of the port project, the Harbor District's port project, is really just beginning, and other groups, including the Humboldt Core Group and the chair of the Yurok tribe, have essentially urged the Harbor District to, at the very least, not enter into a binding agreement with Crowley until this full environmental review is done, and potentially even consider severing ties with the company.
I think that's really important to get those voices heard, especially on something that will be so impactful for the county. Thad, do you have any final thoughts on this story before we get to what's cooking?
Just that it's going to continue to develop, and we'll continue covering it. So folks should keep checking back.
All right. I encourage everyone to pick up the journal and read that complete story. And let's now turn to Jennifer with what's happening on the Arts and Features beat.
Okay, so I know we were just talking disaster a minute ago. And I got to tell you that when Gabrielle Gopinath sent me, our erstwhile arts writer sometimes pops back in, when she sent me the pictures of the burn pile installation at the Morris Graves Museum of Art that's been done by Baccarin Lomale, I was like a little traumatized. I was like, ugh. If you've ever cleaned out a parent or grandparent's house, or you've had your own stuff thrown around by natural disaster, just take a deep breath before you walk in that gallery. It looks like, as she described, some sort of FEMA bulldozer just shoved a busted building into a corner. And the closer you get, the more there is. So this artist, Baccarin Lomale, for one thing, was working at a studio for the past 15 years on the site of the former Synanon cult compound, which I had to look up. And it's this cult from the 1970s that started as like a drug rehab program and then developed what they called attack therapy. Lord, please don't make me go to attack therapy. I will do any other therapy, not this one. but it involved like aggressively getting people to like expose their truths, right? So I would assume that some of this seeped into his work. And indeed, a lot of the idea of like a personal truth or a thing you feel you know to be true is in this, which sounds weird because it's a giant pile of stuff. But the closer you get, you see like a bunch of like track lighting fixtures and random beams and, you know, busted wires and things like that. And then you get closer and you see that in fact, these things are not real things. They are made of paper mache. So somebody made garbage, and it's not just made garbage. You'll see like a weird, like hand-drawn wood grain in all the wood planks and stuff, but you'll also see text written all over everything. And some of those texts he got, some of them are in LED, some of them are handwritten, but he did this weird project, and I mean weird in a good way, where he set up these booths in like a recording booth in like malls, like strip malls and stuff in like the Sierra Nevadas and stuff. And people sat down and shared something that they knew to be true. And what he did was he pulled them out of context and, you know, like something like, I love my dog, right? It's true. But then when it's put next to something like, it was Epstein, as one of the comments was, it's wild. Like they start to form weird little stories because our brains can't help but put things together, right? Our brains kind of won't let things just be random. So having all these, what he calls truth units, randomized, kind of both takes them away from their source, right? They're no longer attached to a person. They're just sort of weird, ethereal voices. And something about a strong statement, right? Like when someone says firmly, you know, carrots are garbage. Suddenly you're like, wait, am I wrong to like carrots, right? Like the intensity of some of those statements is interesting. The way that they are different when they're written versus when they show up in LED lights. At one point, Gabrielle observes that burn pile, as she says, telegraphs the difficulty of finding common ground in an era in which every truth is construed to be personal, right? Like that's your opinion, right? So we have
very powerful
folks who are of the opinion that the last election didn't go how we thought it went. And those opinions are now like influencing policy in a crazy way. So between that and how much the personal emotional truths that people hold matter, like it's wild, right? So this burn pile thing has a lot to do with things that are used, discarded, destroyed, taking things out of context, busting them up. And it's really something she refers to some of the items that are in there as like things you'd see in an antiques mall, like but then they are, you know, fake. They're serving platters and things that he's made and then have inscriptions all over them and stuff. It's very cool and it's worth going and looking at. And, you know, she mentions at the end about like, okay, so like Chat GPT is now cranking out all of these statements and term papers and everything else. And, you know, we've occasionally gotten a press release that we're like, is this Chat GPT? Because it looks crazy. But like now who is determining what's true, right? Is it just the scraping of an internet that is honestly full of lies and wrong ass statements? It's tough to say. So it's a really interesting, she does a great job of talking about it, but I would strongly urge you to read it first before you go and look at it, or go first, read, and then look again. Because it's always worth hearing what Gabrielle has to say about a show.
Definitely a great inspiration for an installation, and it looks like something worth visiting for sure.
Yeah, if I could just get the garbage in my basement to look like that.
Exactly. It's
awesome.
art. It's art in progress. Okay, and let's let's move on to, what we all want to talk about, and that's what's tasty.
I know, salsa, man. So, okay.
Salsa.
I recently went on a taco tour. A friend of mine, I go to visit her in Santa Barbara, and she plans a day every time where we go and eat at like 6 or 7 taco places. And it is spread out. We pace ourselves. But my favorite part is the salsa bars. And in Southern California, this was like a staple for many years, and it's moved up. But it kind of has passed us by. Except now. So Paco's Tacos. Do you love that name? Paco's Tacos?
Love it.
The name actually comes from this guy who, like, if you've been going to quinceañeras and like weddings and stuff around neighborhoods where like there's homemade tacos somewhere, like big tinfoil trays of tacos, they may in fact have been Paco's. And that gentleman, whose last name is Paco Escobar, is actually in the kitchen whipping up tacos. I talked to Alfa Torres, who owns the place with her husband, and she told me about how much she missed having a salsa bar. She was originally born in Mexico, and she came up to Humboldt when she was like 15 after a few years in Southern California. And she's from Guerrero, Mexico. And she has enjoyed eating at restaurants and everything, but was it ever hot enough for her? Right. It was not. And I know how you people are out there who are obsessed with salsa and obsessed with heat. I don't understand you, but I accept you. And I'm like Japanese Irish. We have nothing to prove in the way of heat. But I know you people out there who are always chasing that Scoville high. And there are some contenders in this. So I'm going to read to you the list of salsas in the little bar at Paco's Tacos. Chipotle verde, habanero, pico de gallo, chile de aceite. Am I saying that right, Thad? Okay. Chile de arbol, guacamole salsa, and of course there's fresh lime, habanero slices, pickled jalapenos, etc. And the hottest things are the chile de arbol the chile de aceite and the habanero. So if you're feeling strong, my friend, maybe get a second basket of chips, order some milk, and have that. They also have a couple of other things that I haven't had around here, one of them being molotes, which looks kind of like a little fried football of masa and flour dough. And inside, you can either get it with meat or, as I was advised by the staff, get it with cheese inside. And it is delightful. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to get to share with the table or to not share. And it's also a good vehicle for the salsa. Somebody pointed out to me, a friend pointed out, like, oh, the carnitas and stuff aren't seasoned that high. They're really kind of natural flavor. They're not as salty as in some places. But I kind of think that makes sense with an elaborate salsa bar. So I encourage you to try it and just like go to town and like dip to your heart's content. And they're lovely and very helpful. If you're feeling nervous about the heat, somebody will guide you. I made it through the meal with my mascara intact.
Excellent.
Yeah. And the other last bit of news I will share with you is that I know everybody's been talking about the rooftop sushi bar that Joe Tan is going to put in, Joe Tan of Nori, over on 2nd and E Street in Eureka. But also, he is looking to sell curry leaf if you're looking to buy a Pan-Asian restaurant in a very big space. And he's also trying to, in fact, this week, I think he's talking with some folks about finding a new pizza maker to fill the spot at overtime. Those of you who waited on trying the Chicago and Detroit pizzas at Brett's Pizzeria, Thad, I'm looking at you. I'm so sorry. It's shut down, and as Joe said, he doesn't know how to make pizza and doesn't have time to learn right now. So he's looking for somebody to move in there. So do not give up on that space yet.
All right. Well, get in there, pizza makers. And thanks for all of that great information, Jennifer. Well, that's our time that we have for this week. The current edition of the North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Pick up your copy. You can also find it 24/7, 365 at northcoastjournal.com. My name is Tanya Schrum, and thanks for listening, staying informed, and supportive of our community here on the North Coast.